What's up, everybody? Today we are finally getting to the carburetor on our Cadillac. It is a Carter AFB 4-barrel. I will be doing a two-part series of this carburetor. The first will be the disassembly, and the second will be the reassembly and the cleaning and inspection and all that stuff. For this video, it will actually be a voiceover, so if things seem kind of off, that's why. I just think if I can just take it apart and then not have to deal with explaining everything, and then I can explain everything, I can give you a better content and better wording, I guess, of what exactly I'm doing and what's going on. So let's get down to it. So to get started with our carburetor, the first thing we need to do is take our choke linkages loose. All it is a pin on each side, and you can just pull them loose with a screwdriver. They're not super hard to get out, but they are small, so be careful not to lose them. This is kind of what they look like right there. We also will need to take our accelerator pump linkage loose as well, so that we'll be able to get the top cover of the carburetor off. This one kind of gave me a little bit of trouble just because there was a bunch of old gunk on it. Once we've got that pin out, we can now get to removing our linkages and just get them out of the way. Make sure you pay attention to that accelerator pump because depending on your carburetor, it may be in a different notch in that linkage. Mine was in the middle. If any of you have the same year of Cadillac, it probably is the same, but just FYI. We're going to start removing our metering rods next. The little covers, or whatever you want to call them, gave me quite the battle. I fought with them for probably 10 minutes off screen just so that I could get them loose. I ended up having to get a little itty bitty pick to get in there and just to kind of pop them loose. You want to make sure you're pulling everything out of there. I mean, when you flip the carburetor over, you will notice if a spring falls out, but it's just good to know where everything is when you're taking it apart. Next is the cover screws, and those usually come out fairly easy. Mine weren't gummed up at all. They are all the same length except the two screws in the middle. Once you're able to get all those screws out, you should be able to just fit a little small flat blade into a spot on the top of the cover and get it to pop loose. You don't want to be hitting it with a hammer and like forcing it in there. Just kind of wiggle it around and eventually it'll pop loose. The last thing you want to do is damage the sealing surface for the gasket on that carburetor. There's our floats and our accelerator pump. Once we have that all set aside, you will see me putting all of the screws back into the bottom of the carburetor. I just do that. That's my own personal preference, just because I've got a paranoia that I'm going to lose one of the bolts that go in there. So I just like to do that. Also, it helps me keep track of the length of the bolts while it's fresh on my memory, just in case, I get it all apart and then I have to go and do something and I don't have time right then to get it all back together. If I come look at it, and then I see, oh, this is where all these bolts go, so then I can just put it all back together how it needs to be. Now that we were on to our primary Venturies, these aren't super difficult to remove. They can be tight, so be careful you don't strip the screws out or anything like that. That'd be a pain. But you take the 2 screws out, and then you just need to very carefully remove them. The gasket does stick sometimes, so it can be difficult to get them loose, especially if you have a case where your carburetor's been sitting for a while, or you just know it had a bad case of fuel or something like that. If they won't wiggle out with your hand, you can stick a small blade, just a flat-bladed screwdriver in there, and get it to wiggle loose. But be very careful. You're not prying, you're just trying to get it to wiggle loose just a little bit so that it doesn't bend the orifices in there. Then you are up a creek, and good luck finding a new Venturi for it. So we'll go ahead and cruise through these. The primaries and secondary Venturies are pretty much the exact same process. Just be careful not to strip anything out or break anything. There is a small bracket in the middle of the secondaries that you need to make sure to remove, otherwise you won't be able to get them out. But other than that, it's pretty cut and dry. We are now onto our accelerator pump nozzle. They are Phillips head, so be careful with those. Sometimes they can put up a fight, and they are much easier to strip out. All I'm doing is just putting a little bit of pressure underneath it with a flathead screwdriver, and it should just pop right off of there. Just wiggle it a little bit and get it out of there. One thing I did not show in the video is to flip your carburetor over, and the accelerator pump needle will drop onto your hand. Now we are just getting to pulling off our floats. Just pull that pin out. They do only slide one way, so if you're fighting it on one direction, maybe try the other direction and it might just come out. Set that aside. We need to get our needle out of there as well. I was just flipping it over to make sure I was putting everything on the right side. We can do the same with the next side. Just pull that out. I usually inspect it just to make sure there's not anything too crazy with it, but your rebuild kit should supply a new one. You will notice when I'm taking these out that I don't really exert much effort to get them loose. That is because they are already loose, because I had to really fight to get these loose. I don't know what was in there. Just probably a ton of trash just in the threads somehow from it sitting forever. Once you get those loose, we are actually on the home stretch of our disassembly. You should be able to get your accelerator pump loose. All it is just the linkage, and you just have that one little screw right there. Once that comes out, there is the last little bit of the linkage that will need to pop out. I kind of had to fight with this as well, just because of the dirt and stuff that's in there. Just kind of wiggle it around, it should pop out. Make sure you pull your accelerator pump loose and put that right back on there the way it came. And then your gasket's off, and we're done. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If you got any value out of this, please hit the subscribe button. It helps out a lot. We will be rebuilding it and doing all of our adjustments in the next video. If the video is already out, then I will add the link in the description. So it should be out in a day or two. We'll see you next time.